Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the Be the Voice in CF research session. This is going to be an interactive session in which the three of us are going to describe the different ways in which the community can be a part of research, and then you as the audience will provide valuable perspectives on current research priorities and needs in the community. So participating in clinical trials are a major component of research, but there's many other opportunities to share our perspectives and experiences to help advance research. So as patients and family members, we can provide valuable feedback and help structure the research projects that keep community priorities and the needs at the as the foundation of research goals. So I want to first start us off by introducing ourselves. My name is Ella Balassa. Some of you remember me and JP Clancy as being the co-chairs of last year's inaugural ResearchCon. I'm an adult with CF and I live in Richmond, Virginia. I have a degree in biology and I've worked in microbiology lab, and I've become a voice in in science and research with a patient perspective. I have been quite involved in various research committees with the foundation, serving on the infection research committee and the protocol review committee, and we're going to talk about these and many more later on in the session. And I've also taken it upon myself to pursue various research opportunities outside of the foundation, and I've shared my experience of getting phage therapy and advocating for the development of novel therapies to treat infections. And since my treatment last year, phage therapy is now being actively researched and funded by the CFF, and clinical trials are underway. So this is very exciting. And on our panel, we also have JP Clancy, and he's the CFF Vice President of Clinical Research, and Rachel Cravens, a parent of someone with CF, and she has a doctorate in nursing. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves now.
I guess I'll go because I think CL comes before CR. So anyway, hi, thank you for being here tonight, and pleasure to be here and working again with Ella, and also for the first time getting a chance to work with Rachel. My name is JP Clancy. Again, I've worked for the CF Foundation since about 2018, but for 25 years plus before that, I've been very involved in CF, both as a physician, caregiver, as a researcher in the laboratory, and also as a clinical researcher. And so I feel like I've really been fortunate to have the experience of CF research from many different angles. And as I got to be a little more older and grayer, spent a lot of time doing review work and actually starting to do more grant reviews and participating in sort of oversight roles for research. So anyway, so I think we're very excited to be able to share with you all the different ways that you can participate in research and also help shape research. And again, this is an exciting time, and we really want to be partners with you in this going forward. So I'll shut up now and I'll pass it on to Rachel.
Thanks, JP. I am Rachel Cravens, and I have a daughter that is 22 years old who has cystic fibrosis, and I know she's watching now, so hi, Megan. And we have been involved, my family and I have been involved for many years in fundraising, and I've helped with some advocacy, and I've been involved with Community Voice for about 3 years now, and I've done several committees and boards and helped wherever I can and done as many surveys as I can. And I also have a doctorate in nursing.
Thank you both. So we'll get into our presentation, but before we do, I just want to briefly go over some technology items about how we're going to interact. So we're going to have a brief presentation, and we're going to have some polling questions. So we invite you to participate in those. And for some of the questions we're going to pose, there will also be an opportunity to write your answers in the chat feature or in the Q&A section. And like if you want to answer with something that isn't one of our polling responses. And then additionally, we're going to have some brainstorming questions where we invite you to submit your ideas into that Q&A, and then you can upvote if you see answers or ideas that you agree with, and then we can see those as well. And then you'll also there's also the group chat, which obviously you all are already utilizing, which is great. And if you do have any technology problems, then please go to the tech and support. So I think we're going to get into our presentation with our slides. And if you want to see the slides larger or any of us larger, there's going to be a slider at the bottom of your screen. Rachel, do you want to pull up our slides? Awesome, great. So this is Be the Voice in CF Research, and we have no disclosures. And we're going to start off with our first polling question. And this is, in what ways have you been engaged in research? Have you participated in a clinical trial? Have you given feedback through surveys or focus groups to inform research? Have you served on a committee to inform a research project, participated in local projects, or more than one, or none of the above? I guess we can have participants answer.
Yeah, it looks like we have a lot of answers coming in.
Yeah, but I guess I can go on and talk about the ways in that you can be involved in many of these things that we listed here, many of these opportunities through community voice. And you can receive requests via email to share your perspectives on surveys, on focus groups, committees, work groups, and you can choose your the level of participation you want to have. And sometimes these are only like 5-minute surveys, but they're very helpful. And I've been a member since its inception, as Rachel has been as well. And through it, I've had so many opportunities to participate in committees and research projects that I'm currently a part of. So it looks like for the polling, a lot of people are saying more than one of the above. That's awesome. That's really great. Exciting.
That's amazing.
And so, our voices matter because our health experiences are valuable in helping researchers structure research projects and based on the community's perspectives and what we are deeming as important. So providing your input and direct collaboration, we are really advancing health outcomes. And we can go on to the next slide. So after this session, hopefully you will have learned the different kinds of research and the way that the community has participated in prior projects and current roles, and as well as talking about future opportunities. So we welcome everyone, like I said, to share their experiences with us in our brainstorming. And just to mention these slides and there will be some other resources as well, like the clinical trial finder, and more about community voice, and that'll be in the resources room. So I'm going to let JP take the floor now and discuss some of the research involvement and give examples of where the community currently has involvement.
Thank you, Ella. Thank you very much, and thanks again, everybody, for being engaged in our presentation today. Rachel, I think you can go ahead and advance. We decided to have Rachel be in charge of the slides rather than trying to bounce around back and forth because I've been in situations where that hadn't worked so well. One of the big reasons I was drawn to work with the CF Foundation was the fact that it was so committed to having its research shaped and respond to the community. And I've only seen that grow over the 2 years that I've been part of this. And I think I wanted to just start by saying there are numerous ways that you can engage in CF research. There's a wide spectrum. We recognize that this is not a one-size-fits-all approach. But as you kind of move from left to right here, these are just sort of different ways that we'll spend more time on in just a minute, sort of going into more detail about ways that people can participate in research. Can be including informing about research, providing very specific input to a given project, sitting and reviewing research that comes in, seeking funding, serving on an advisory board or some sort of an oversight board for research projects or programs, and then also working, on the research team. Either, obviously, you can be a research participant, but there are also growing opportunities to be co-investigators. So, Rachel, you can go ahead and advance, and I'll just kind of walk through and give some examples of these. And at the end of this, we'll do some more talking and brainstorming about some future research priorities. So the first, way in which people, the CF community, can participate in research is really informing the research needs and helping and the importance of understanding the patient priorities in research. And what that means is that, these are giving specific feedback about sort of what type of research conduct is meaningful to people with CF. And a couple of examples that I wanted to highlight. Back in 2017, I believe, we did a very extensive research prioritization exercise with the CF community, and that really became one of the drivers for a number of our research programs over the next few years, including the Infection Research Initiative. And so it may have to do with sort of broad-based, deciding what the CF Foundation should be focused on. Or it can be very, very specific. Recently had a company who's in the midst of developing a new CF medication, Boehringer Ingelheim, which is a pretty well-known company. And they really wanted to know, specific information about disease burden and also what are high priority areas. So, and again, can vary depending on the scope, can vary significantly, whether it's just a specific question from an industry partner or for the entire CF Foundation. A couple of ongoing examples. We just completed work with a group of academic researchers focused on CF-related diabetes. And this included focus groups and survey work, which is really helping to inform what a study protocol is going to look like. Another example is there's an ongoing prioritization that's going on for our sustaining daily care, CF care, with Success with Therapies Research Consortium, and that's open until April 21st of this year. And so these are sort of examples of survey work that we're just in the process of doing. And right now we're also planning some additional ways of gathering information from surveys, both one being on mental health and another focused on CFTR restoration. So first of all, this is a very straightforward way that people can participate. I was just going to ask Ella or Rachel, have you guys done any kind of work with surveys and so forth for the research community?
So I actually recently provided feedback on the prioritization research for research ideas for sustaining daily care.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it was a lengthy survey for sure, but it described but it was very detailed is what I was trying to say, and it described about, I'd say, like, I forget, like 10 ideas or ways that CF care can be or the foundation can empower patients or parents of children with CF and with the proper resources and support to maintain their care. So I think these surveys, they definitely are an example of how the foundation is giving attention to addressing the community's needs, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Rachel, if you can go to the next slide, we'll cover, I think, a little bit more about specific research project input. So, and in addition to doing surveys that are sort of maybe somewhat broad-based, there are sometimes, and these are all examples of CF Foundation-supported research, in which we really need a lot of help in designing what that research is going to look like. And I'll just give you 3 examples here, and fourth one too that's coming soon. Simplify. So you may have heard of this study, but this is one that is it's under development, and we are hoping to roll it out in the fall of this year. And basically, it's trying to examine whether people who are on Trikafta and stable, can they discontinue either hypertonic saline or pulmozyme or both for a period of time and remain healthy. And it took a lot of work for us to figure out exactly how we could really do this in a way that was workable for the physicians and the CF community, and again to figure out what we could actually study. I think everybody wanted us to study airway clearance, and there were some challenges to doing that we have to figure out first. But point is, there were many interactions back and forth with the development of that protocol before it really found its path forward. A second example is Galaxy, and this is a study that is really seeking to better understand the GI symptoms of CF patients, how this symptom or that symptom relates to what's going on, and we've just never really had a good handle on how to characterize the symptoms of CF patients and which ones are meaningful, and there's lots of ways to assess them, but they've really never been carefully applied to CF. So this study got a lot of input from the CF community in its design, and the good news is it was finished a year before it was planned to be finished. And the reason we were so I bring that up is when you design a study correctly in a meaningful way to the patients and people affected by a disease, you actually can get the work done really, really quickly often. And so we're really looking forward to those results that will be coming out hopefully in the next handful of months, and we'll be using that to frame some future research in GI therapies. And another one I wanted to mention that is just getting ready to take off is called Stop Peds, and this is basically trying to look at a study that would look at use of antibiotics by mouth for children who have outpatient pulmonary exacerbation. And there was a lot of back and forth about figuring out, how do you design this so that people, if they're really concerned, can still, get access to the antibiotics if it's really feeling like things are not going well. And so, long story short, after a lot of discussion with the community and feedback and surveys and focus groups, I think they finally got a study design that's really going to allow us to go forward. We'll be also gathering input from the CF community for an upcoming study that has the acronym Mayflower, and there's no way I'm going to remember exactly what it means, but it has to do with understanding pregnancy in Trikafta and other modulator-treated patients. A lot of pregnancy-related questions. So I don't know if either you, Rachel, or Ella were involved in any of these specific ones, but anyway, these were really critical for us being able to design these studies correctly and in a meaningful way. Rachel,
I wasn't in any of these, but
I didn't.
Yeah, what about you, Rachel?
Yep. Well, in addition to sort of providing feedback and also doing survey type of work, we also really are relying on the CF community to help review the research that comes to us. And this can be in many different ways. One example is the Protocol Review Committee, which is part of the TDN. Another example is the Clinical Research Committee. This is basically for people who send in grants from institutions, and also providing research summaries in the Review Committee. And if you look at that's in the box below, it gives an example of the types of questions that we ask the community reviewers to answer. Are these feasible studies? Is it too complicated? Too many study visits? Is the protocol asking you to do too much? Would it ever really work? Once we try to implement it at places, is the topic even important to the CF community? Would you be willing to enroll? Would your child be willing to enroll? If not, what are the barriers? And if we can understand those types of things, we obviously can then better fund research that's actually going to go somewhere. And I was thinking that Rachel, you may have had some of this. Or Ella may have had some experience doing this. Am I correct?
Yeah, so I am a reviewer on the Protocol Review Committee. So I think I reviewed about 4 protocols so far. And I've answered those questions you see in the box on the slide. And as reviewers, we get 2 weeks to review a protocol and provide guidance on, how a particular study might be received by the community, and whether the study demands or the criteria is something that, a large percentage of the community would be interested in, or identify whether, it doesn't accommodate, various needs for some reason. So it's been, it's really been insightful to see a lot of, how kind of the back end of, before these trials, become the trials that we participate in, what that looks like in the planning process.
Yes, and the research summary committee, review committee, They actually take information for the CF research news and use that data from the CFF patient registry, and they help to make sure that the points are clear and concise and that it's kind of broken down into a non-medical language so that everyone's able to understand that no matter what their level of medical knowledge is. And so it kind of puts it in layman's terms. So that's very interesting as well.
Yeah, I mean, these are just critical roles, and I would say that it's been really interesting to watch some of these review committees sort of change as we've started to incorporate the voice of the CF community. And I sat on that review committee for 15 years, and it's only been in the last 4 or 5 that it's really started to incorporate the voice of the patients. And it's really interesting is just watching the reviewers, how important that is becoming to them, and how that sort of is make or break decisions. So anyway, just a message to let you know that it really is a critical role played by the community to helping us with the decide about research. Probably next slide, Rachel. In addition to obviously being able to get surveyed, participate, perhaps review. There are also some kind of interesting I guess you would say almost administrative roles that people can have in research. And this does kind of vary a bit depending on where you live and what your background is. But the point is there are opportunities that may fit well for you based on what your interest is and what your background is. First of all, there's something called the Data Safety Monitoring Committee, and this is basically assigned to all CF, basically any study that is funded by either the NIH or the CF Foundation has to have some sort of a safety monitoring committee, sort of an external body that takes a look and watches the study conduct and makes sure it's being done safely and following the plans and rules that they set forth. And there's an opportunity for CF community to be part of those. Locally, there's a possibility of being part of an institutional review board. And basically all academic medical centers that conduct research, human research, have to have something called an IRB, or institutional review board. And basically it is a group of people from within the hospital plus the community who will review applications to conduct a research project at a given institution. And they have sort of a variety of things they look at. Is it safe, and is it ethical, and does it potentially provide meaningful benefits? Is it what's the risk level? Those types of things. And it's really the voice of the community is critical in that. And it doesn't necessarily include a CF patient, but it certainly can. And another place this can happen is on commercial review boards. The TDN, which again conducts a lot of research for the CF Foundation, all of the vast majority of their institutional review board work is done by a single IRB, and that one's name is Advera, and it has a number of community members who also participate in that. In addition to this, there are a variety of kind of steering committees and work groups which really focus on perhaps a single area of research and help kind of guide the bigger picture of research. What type of applications do we hope to see? What are the gaps in our understanding about a certain topic, and how are we going to fill those gaps? And some examples, we again have a steering committee for the infection research initiative has a steering committee. The Success with Therapies Research Consortium has representatives from the community. Our Women's Health Research Working Group has representatives, and also the Mental Health Advisory Committee. So I think Rachel and Ella also have personal experience in some of these, and curious what that was like for each of you.
Yeah, so I'm a member on the infection research, and I was involved in a meeting last year with a group of CF researchers and a few other community members as well, to discuss what we felt were the most important research needs. And then this meeting led to the creation of a white paper detailing the goals and the focus of infection research in the future, and what was used, and we used this then, or the CF Foundation used this to reach the research communities in asking for research proposals and ideas that then the CFF could fund. And I'm a part of this committee for one more year, and I think we're going to have our meeting in May. And I'm very passionate about infection research as someone who's had severe exacerbations and used a lot of antibiotics, and infection research is still very crucial for many. Rachel, did you want to discuss your involvement?
Yeah, thanks, Ella. So the Data Safety Monitoring Committee, parents used to come to me and say, how do you know that these clinical trials are safe? Why do you let your daughter participate in these? Aren't you scared? And so through the community voice, I've learned by being on this committee that there is a group of people that are protecting the safety and welfare of people participating in clinical trials and ensuring the scientific integrity of all these trials. So there are people monitoring this. And the board is made up of clinical experts, physicians, statisticians, and patient advocates, and people like me. And so as a nurse and a mom, that safety is very important. So I'm excited to be a part of this committee.
Yeah, it's absolutely critical. Having been, participant in research or helping to perform research, those roles are absolutely critical. So again, a really powerful way in which the community can. Rachel, I think we go on to the next slide, and I think it's the kind of the last one that sort of describes the different types of research. Yeah, we're also moving in a direction where people from the CF community can help actually co-design research projects. And most of this work is right now happening probably a little bit more in the quality improvement space, but is something that we're looking carefully at extending in our research portfolio. One example is something called the CF Learning Network, or CFLN, and this is a group of about, I think now it's up to 40 different CF care centers that really function in many ways like a learning laboratory. And they often will conduct sort of quality improvement projects across institutions in a very real-time way. And all of the projects that they undertake are developed in complete collaboration and sort of a partner level between the care centers and the CF community and patients receiving, or the families receiving their care at given CF care centers. Obviously, the patient voice is critical in the clinical advisory boards at a variety of different CF care centers. And then a recently developed research group, the CF Reproductive and Sexual Health Collaborative, or CFRESH, was funded by PCORI, which is the Patient-Centered Outcome Research Institute, which really was focused on developing a co-production model for conducting clinical research. And we've been interacting with this group and learning from them, and a very exciting way to develop research that is most meaningful to the community.
So I've been actually on the patient task force for CFRESH, and it really is an equal partnership with women with CF in the community, and then researchers at the University of Washington. And they come up with strategies on how to tackle these unknowns, and they have monthly conference calls on various topics related to sexual and reproductive health, and then they brainstorm these potential areas for research. So women with CF can be, I think, grant writers and on the governance board. So they're really thoroughly immersed in their research strategy.
Yeah, it's really exciting to see that. And I do know with the CF Learning Network, where I was in Cincinnati before I came to the CF Foundation, that they were part of one of that, helping design and develop that, and really an exciting system where you have co-production of all of the different research questions and quality improvement initiatives. I think that kind of covers, the summary, if I'm not mistaken. I'm going to turn it back to you, Ella.
Yeah, no, sorry, no problem. So yeah, we're gonna go on to our polling question now. So based on some of the research that we've heard in this presentation, and if you have new ideas, we'd like to know what level or types of engagement you would like to contribute to CF research. So these are kind of tiered. So clinical trial participation only would be lowest, and then basic would include everything that's under it. So full partnership would include all of those opportunities that are listed there. So we'll give everyone a few moments to provide their input. And this is just another reminder that many of these opportunities can be found through community voice, and specifically obviously, like the committees and things like that, you can find through Research Voice, which you can sign up for through Community Voice from that sign up. And
Yeah.
there's also, if you don't have an account and if you want to change your preferences, or if you've been a member for a while and you want to make sure that everything is updated, then you can email the team at the Community Voice at cff.org.
Yeah.
And I know
Yeah, it's
everyone.
really...
Sorry.
Go ahead,
I know
Rachel.
everyone's really busy these days. And so when I first started Community Voice 3 years ago, I was thinking to myself, I do not have time to do stuff like this. But some of these surveys that come to you literally only take 5 minutes. And they are using that data and that feedback for their research. So you can spend as much time as you want if you have more and more time to give, or the least amount of time that you want to give. Any time that you're able to give some input on that, it's critical.
Yeah, I was just going to reiterate, though, as you highlighted, depending on where you are in your life, you may or be able to be more or less involved, and that's okay. I mean, there's sort of quick one and done opportunities, or there are much more, significant, time consuming, but sort of perhaps more, for that person, maybe more fulfilling ways. So this is really interesting. I think I hear my marching orders about we really need to continue to flesh out the co-designed research. So, message heard, okay? Promise.
No, that's wonderful. That's great to hear. I'm excited. I think, so we do have some brainstorming questions now for you all. And I think this is on our next slides. And this will be, like, what research topics are a priority in future research for the broader community? Like, what do you all want to have researched? I think, so basically you can, just a reminder, you can put your answers or your ideas in that Q&A box, and we'll be reading through those. But JP, I think you could talk a little bit about some of the prioritization that's already happened, or that you all have already considered through the foundation.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I think, I'm not on mute. Just want to make sure. Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, in fact, if you want to, Rachel, just go ahead, maybe one or two slides. While people are putting in some ideas, I can show what this looks like. The CF Foundation through, there you go, our backup slides. And then one more, I think that'll do it. But a couple of years ago, we underwent I guess it's going to be one more, sorry. A couple of years ago, we underwent a very extensive survey of close to 2,000 CF patients and families, and asked about how they would prioritize different CFF priorities for activities, and where should we be focusing our eye on research. And as you look down at this, you have at the top respiratory microorganism detection and treatments. Next down is reducing treatment burden. Next down is gastrointestinal symptoms. Number 4, CF-related liver disease. Number 5, mental health, and so forth. You can see them all right here. And each bar represents, I think it was the sum of the top 3 priorities. And the point is, as I look at those, almost every one of them has become a new research initiative or a big project. The whole infection research initiative was, by and large, driven by this information. Reducing treatment burden, that's what the Simplify study is. GI symptoms, that's what Galaxy was. CF-related liver disease, this is actually a big study we're doing with the NIH called PUSH. Mental health, we've developed a mental health advisory committee, and now we're going to be embarking in some next steps. CF-related diabetes, we're developing a program to support some new research in diabetes. So I guess the point is that it makes a difference. It really, really makes a difference. These high priority areas, they tell us what to focus on, and we take them very, very seriously. So anyway, we really would like your input, and that can be today, or it can be, through Research Voice. And as we put together these future, prioritization, that opportunity is going to present itself very soon.
Thank you. I think we'll go back up to our brainstorming slide. So I think we had one more topic that we wanted to pose, and that is What barriers, if any, have there been to your involvement? I guess I'll talk about this personally a little bit. Obviously these barriers can be broad based on whether we're about participation in clinical trials or just, unfamiliarity with the types of involvement opportunities. But one barrier that I've experienced is the inability to participate in clinical trials. And this is based on the exclusion criteria of, those with FEV1 of less than 40%. And this is a category that I've fallen into for many years. And, this exclusion criteria and some others, such as, those who culture NTM, that are commonly excluded, like a blanket exclusion criteria. I think that there is a great diversity in clinical manifestations in the population, and having robust trials that include patients across all the disease spectrum is important. And as we see TRIKAFTA continue to improve the overall health of many, I think we might see a separation in those, who are very healthy and maybe not as inclined to participate, and then those who, maybe have no modulators available or who do have severe disease and have stability with TRIKAFTA, but, may still be maybe interested but ineligible. So the group of patients who would be eligible and willing, may be decreasing. So, I think we're going to see this, and obviously a lot of other, changes. But JP, I'll kind of pose this for you. This leads me to a question about, what are the upcoming plans and changes for CF research patient involvement opportunities as well as in trials? Can you speak to some of the gaps, and then how, patient involvement might change or look different in the coming years?
Yeah, well, it's a great question. I think the short answer, it obviously depends a lot on the nature of the research. The research that we are sort of driving, those are often those bigger studies, like, for example, PROMISE, you may have heard of, or Simplify I mentioned, and so forth. These other kind of big studies that are looking at, sort of observational studies looking at patients who are starting new therapies and having a bigger look. We're going to try to, for those types of studies, speaking to what you were mentioning, this is the first step into real world research for people who are receiving new therapies like modulators. So we open up the enrollment criteria to be much broader. Most clinical trials that are going on that are funded or supported by a sponsor, industry or whatever, they have kind of really tight criteria that a patient has to meet to get into that study. And that helps because it helps, limit the variables that might make it more difficult to get a clear answer from your study. But it doesn't necessarily tell you how well that new therapy translates to patients who are outside of those kind of tight parameters. So we will continue to expand those types of studies, ensuring that we have, broad representation, people with mild disease, people with advanced lung disease. That's going to be a critical in our next groups. The other thing I was just going to mention is that I think the concept of co-production of research or co-design, call it what you will, I think is taking traction. And we've begun to speak internally about what requests for applications would look like, what are the topic areas that we should be paying attention to. So I think you'll be seeing more and more of that capacity of partnered research supported going forward from the CF Foundation. So anyway, we will continue to broaden our engagement to make sure the research is speaking to the needs and the lives basically of the CF community.
No, that's wonderful to hear that. I guess we can stop sharing our slides now. All right, that was the end of it. So, speaking of, the research priorities that we discussed and in our Q&A, and I think many would be interested to know how the CFF may be using this feedback from these conversations and from virtual events, like ResearchCon, to help shape research direction. Would there be any of that in the future, or or how is this involvement or this feedback provided important?
Yeah, I mean, I think the kind of feedback that we get here, I mean, we hold on to all of this, and it honestly is reviewed with the community voice team, sort of the people within the CF Foundation who really are helping collate all this information. It really starts to begin sort of the first steps in what are, for example, what kind of focus groups do we need to, it basically starts to set the agenda for next research directions. There seemed to be a lot of interest around topic A that when we were in ResearchCon. What kind of information have we gathered in that in the past? We basically have a big data repository. We can look backwards, but also looking forward, we realize the CF experience is just changing so rapidly that information that we even had a year ago, often it may be completely out of date now. And so it helps to set up, determining when and how to ask the questions about research priorities. And again, that information is updated very regularly so that we are keeping our fingers on the pulse of what the community is really needing. So I saw an interesting, I'll let you, if you've had a chance to look more, it is tricky to try to talk and also look at things.
If you did want to bring up one that you wanted to address, absolutely go ahead.
Well, I just saw James, who I felt like, James being James Lawler being a director or lead on this. I'd love to try to answer your question. You had said, what kind of research can we do leveraging things we learned from COVID and its impact on high-risk people like us? And I think that's a great question. We're all wrestling with that. I think, there's sort of two sides to sort of COVID research. I think learning how to take care of people who are really sick, and that's right now. And then the other side of it is kind of learning from probably the broader exposure that the community has had to better understand how COVID makes some people sick and some people asymptomatic carriers. And so my suspicion is, the role of for example, the CF Foundation, or the role of CF research may be embedded nicely into some of our big observational studies we got going on right now. We were actually talking about this last week. This is an opportunity to learn what COVID-19 means to the CF community by, for example, if we did a blood draw in one of our big observational studies we're doing right now that sort of looked could teach us about the prevalence of COVID-19 in the CF population. Then we could go back and start learning, were you actually sick? Were you an asymptomatic carrier? Is there something about CF patients that, maybe leads to a different experience? Again, some slight suspicion that I don't want to go too far, but that people with CF seem to do okay, and I personally would have thought CF patients were at much higher risk. And I'm not saying that risk is gone, but so far it hasn't jumped out at me as a whole lot more than other populations. And so there's some opportunities to really learn from this by paying attention to what's happening in the current space, and then trying to link that to research that is already in process. And one of the nice things about the CF Foundation, we're small enough that we can be nimble. And you can change a protocol sort of midway and say, we're just going to grab a blood draw at the 6-month point, whatever 6 months from now, and all of a sudden that's going to be able to inform us about a question like that. So hope that answers yours.
So yeah, on this topic, really on COVID, how will it be changing participation in clinical trials and then in research engagement as well? And there will,
Yeah, it's a great question, and I'd love to hear what other people think too. I think it is my opinion. That's all you're getting is opinion here, because I don't think anybody knows 100% yet, but I think we're going to go back to a research that's going to be probably fundamentally changed in one way or another. And I think one way, obviously, is that this seems to be the push that maybe has been necessary for us to be able to validate doing outcome measures that are not done in a clinic visit. So in other words, really having home spirometry or electronic patient-reported outcomes, surveys and so forth, telehealth visits, doing all, not all, but a good chunk of the research outside of the research clinic. And historically, the problem is these kind of hard endpoints that, for example, the FDA is looking to approve a drug have not been, quote, validated. They just don't have the strength of sort of careful research to show that you can believe the data you get. Well, I think all of a sudden necessity is going to push us to be able to get that data. And I think there's been some amazing advancements, types of home monitoring equipment that just how well it performs, how reliable it is, reproducible, that didn't exist even 5 years ago when we tried to do some stuff with this. So the point is, I think research will become more virtual, and I think that's great. I think that is actually going to lead to a lot denser data too. If you could get more reports during a study than just 5 clinic visits, you actually got data every week of a 20-week study. That's so much more informative. You just have to believe the data. It has to be reliable, and I think we can finally get there. So I don't know. Probably spoke too much. Sorry.
No, that was a great answer. I guess I'll read off some of the questions that we are getting in from the audience. Let's see. How about, could the CFF provide some kind of professional training grants for CF patients that want to become researchers or be involved in co-production of research?
I'm sorry, I was listening and reading at the same time. Could you say that? I'm going to listen to you and not look at any questions. So go ahead.
Yeah, no problem. As we saw from our polling, that a lot of people are very interested in co-production, and so one of the questions we have here is, could the CFF provide some kind of professional training for patients that want to become researchers or be involved in co-production of research?
Yeah, I think it's a possibility. I will be to be honest with you, we don't have that capability right now. We are while we are very engaged in research, we've had some barriers historically to being able to have co-investigators with community members. And one of the problems has to do with some of the grants and contracts language that exists, in which we have to fund and people who have faculty appointments at institutions, and that obviously can be complicated. We're working on that so that that's no longer a barrier. But the short answer is we don't have the capability now. We're learning more about it, and I think that that possibility exists in the not too distant future as we start to work and break down some of these barriers that are, many of which are 40 years old, just hadn't been looked at before. So all good questions though. And I will say that in terms of the CFLN, and which is again the CF Learning Network, again, collection of about 40 CF care centers which have banded together to do co-production quality improvements. That training does exist, and it is done in part by the CF Foundation, but also by partner institutions who are also well-versed and have expertise in co-production research. So there are mechanisms in place. We do them right now mostly through partnership.
So this is a question on more clinical trial related. So how do you decide which CF clinics to pick when enrolling for specific clinical trials? And who decides?
Great question. Yeah, great question. So it depends a little bit who's asking the question. I'll tell you what that means. So let's say that you are interested in being in the next Vertex study of a new drug, whatever it may be, or new modulator of some sort. They will, again, I've never worked for Vertex, so I can't say exactly, but my suspicion is that they have developed a working relationship with a number of sites, and are frequently going to those that have been able to enroll and get startup going quickly and sort of performed well, sort of in the eyes of the sponsor, are probably going to be places that they're going to go back to, as you might guess. And so sponsors will do that on their own. However, the CF Foundation tries very hard through our TDN to guide sponsors towards sites that will kind of even out where research is being conducted, so that we don't have 20 sites doing 90% of the research and 70 sites doing 20% of the research. It doesn't make any sense, and we really would like the research to be done across the country, across sort of demographics, across sort of different climates and different area geography, just so that we can feel confident that the results really do extend as much as we can learn from a clinical trial. So it's a little bit of both. I mean, the industry has their game plan. We try to guide them towards places that we know, A, may be looking for studies, or B, to make sure that we have representation from across a variety of different geographic areas so that we can get the most meaningful data done or out of our research studies.
So we kind of touched on this a bit before, but how do you, talking about the future of how research is going to change, but how are the priorities going to change, or how do you see the priorities change as people with CF are living longer?
Yeah. So how will the priorities change as people are? I mean, when you say living longer, I presume living better, because of Trikafta and so forth. I think it is going to change a lot. I mean, I think honestly, the first step is defining there's two sides to this. One is defining what the new CF is, what it means for people, and we're beginning that process right now by doing these kind of larger observational studies that are sort of looking holistically at CF. What happens with the diabetes when you have start Trikafta? What happens with your bone health? What happens with your lung inflammation? What happens with your infections? All these different aspects of CF. So we're looking at this very carefully through some of these bigger observational studies like PROMISE and so forth. But the other piece too is we acknowledge that that I think that CF care will become more will need to be more personalized. In other words, historically we've taken a pretty much raise all boats approach. Like everybody should be on hypertonic, everybody should be on pulmosan, everybody should be on azithromycin. Everybody should be on, twice daily airway clearance using this program. Anyway, very standardized, which definitely is a very effective way to improve everybody's outcomes. But all of a sudden, the disease has changed for a lot of people in a big way. And so I think it's going to be very much about determining which works best for you and how do we feel confident the decisions you make now aren't going to have some sort of a long-term negative effect that's harder to measure. So that's what we're going to be wrestling with, and it's exciting. Don't get me wrong, but it's new. These are questions we've never had the chance to ask before. It's completely new territory.
So what, going back to the co-designed, but what would be some of the biggest challenges with co-design
Trying to do that
versus traditional?
Well, yeah, I think it's a great question. I think that was another James one if I saw somewhere. But anyway, I think to me, I think co-production is probably going to work best for research that is going to be trying to ask and better kind of understand and describe, if that makes sense, as
Oh, did we lose him? I think we did. Rachel, you're muted. Are you there? Okay.
I think we did. I don't see him.
I don't either. Yep, we lost. Okay. Well, we can just.
What a great problem to have, though, is that people are living longer with CF.
I mean, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's. So yeah, I guess we can just answer. If you have any,
I see a lot of questions of getting more involved.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, go ahead. Do you want to go?
Well, I think that just going back to what we had said before about being signing up for Community Voice, a lot of people had mentioned, they do the surveys. How can they get more involved? And I think the members of the CF Foundation or Community Voice had already answered a few of them. But if you can email them or go back and check your original profile to make sure that you had said that you wanted to be more involved and that you were interested in those areas. Otherwise, they don't know that you're interested. And so you will continue to kind of get the same either surveys or things that you had originally said that you were interested in. So be sure to update your profile. Be sure to reach out to them and just let them know.
Yeah, I actually did that earlier this week because I realized I hadn't updated it since I joined, and I wanted to make sure that I was getting all the opportunities that are available and that I'd be interested in. And it was a really easy process. I emailed them and they got back to me right away. So please do that. If you've been a member for a while and haven't taken a look at what your preferences were or what you were interested in before, definitely might have changed now. So that's definitely something to do. So we have about 5 minutes left, and I guess if JP is still off, then we could probably talk about, what what is the most out of the box or novel thing or interesting thing the community can do to amplify, our voice in research and in conquering new challenges. Rachel, what do you think about that?
I've thought about that, and I still haven't been able to come up with exactly. Tell me what you think, Ella.
So, I think the most important thing is in our experiences, and, especially in what you would like to see in research and the problems that you want to see conquered. So I think educating yourself and reading about the research that's happening in biotechs and in academic research is really important. You can look outside the foundation for some of these things, and if you come across like an art or a journal entry or some kind of research that is novel and something that you don't know about, JP's back.
Sorry, I don't know what that was. I think that was one of my kids must have been downloading Fortnite or something. But anyway, carry on. Sorry.
No, that's okay. We were, I was just, since we have about like 3 minutes left, I was just wrapping up with our last question. And that was, what is the most out of the box thing that the community can do to amplify the patient voice in research? And so I was, just saying that I think it's really important for us as patients to educate ourselves and read about and understand the research that's happening in academic research and looking outside the foundation for some of this information too. And, if you come across something that's new and something you don't know about, ask your care teams, ask the foundation, and seek answers, and even ask the researchers themselves. You can do that. You can email them. I've really learned a lot myself from doing exactly that, reaching out to researchers and connecting with them personally. So I think by empowering ourselves with knowledge and a willingness to share our perspectives at the same time, on platforms, commentaries, or through, structured feedback, like with the foundation, we can be these active contributors in shaping the kind of research that's going to be most relevant to our needs and, managing our care and then hopefully curing CF in the not so distant future. So JP, what would you say is one thing that the community can do to amplify?
That's. I don't know if I could say I have anything more eloquent than what you've already said. I think the only thing that comes to mind is take charge. Drive the research. And that means reaching out and being involved in that. We are looking for guidance. To say the truth, we are. We have our suspicions what people need and want, but we don't know until we hear from them. So be the voice. Be involved. Be loud. It's all right. Things actually do happen. I mean, I'm thinking a year ago, and I'm just thinking about phage, and Ella was, you were doing the infectious thing, and we were very sort of like, this is kind of wacky, and I don't know if this is really going to be. And all of a sudden, where are we a year later? I mean, we've got 3
it's fantastic.
Rolling out. It's amazing. So, I mean, it's a lot of factors that we're playing it, but, you made a difference. So I guess I just, feel empowered, rock the boat a little bit. It's okay. We can take it. And we really want to hear what your needs are so we understand what to do. Okay?
No, thank you for that, JP.
Absolutely.
That was a great way to end our session. I want to thank you all for coming, and we hope that this was informative and engaging at the same time. And I encourage all of you to be as involved in research as you feel comfortable. And as JP said, our voices, our experiences are really helping to advance research. So I want to thank you all and hope you have a wonderful night and enjoying ResearchCon. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.